Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the energy file that is in light of Egypt allocating new lands for solar and wind energy, renewable energy in Egypt for the 2035 vision. Now, we're going to be focusing on renewable energy in tonight's episode, but before we start doing that, let's check out some of the news and the stories making the news today. We'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who ordered strict commitment to monitoring regulations in regards to Egypt's agricultural exports. During his meeting with Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, the President was briefed on the unprecedented development in agricultural exporting sector. President el-Sisi stressed on the significance of ensuring premium quality of agricultural products exports and the sole reliance on coding systems approved by quarantine authorities. The head of state instructed that an application criteria be set by importing countries for all agricultural products. He further gave his directives to conduct regular follow-up processes and offer technical and veterinary support to youth farmers and animal breeders. In another meeting, President el-Sisi said that wheat imports prices should be fairly set in order to offer rewarding economic revenues for farmers and peasants and ensure increasing wheat supplies. At a meeting with Premier Medbouli and concerned ministers and officials to follow up food security sector, the President stressed that strategic stocks of staple food commodities should be maintained nationwide. The head of state instructed that recently established strategic silos, storages facilities nationwide, should be expanded to ensure added value of commodities. And Prime Minister Mustafa Medbouli stressed on the important role of the Decent Life presidential initiative in improving Egyptian rural areas and transforming the services provided to citizens in targeted villages. At a follow-up meeting of the landmark initiative, the Prime Minister hailed its role also in offering more job opportunities to villagers who participate in the implementation of the developmental and services projects carried out under the initiative. Medbouli emphasized the need to swiftly tackle any challenges facing the implementation of the initiative through coordination with concerned bodies. These were some of the stories making the news today, but now turning our attention to tonight's topic of discussion. Now, Egypt is allocating land for green hydrogen and renewable energy. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back to focus more on it.
The Cabinet of Egypt has approved a number of proposals to support deployment and use of green hydrogen and renewable energy in different regions of the country. The Cabinet decided to allocate 141,075 fadels of state-owned land located in Matruh Governorate for renewable energy projects at a meeting held in the new administrative capital. Under the program, the New and Renewable Energy Authority, the NREA, is authorized to offer the land to potential investors. Number of land parcels in the southern Egyptian governorates of Aswan and Sohag were also made available for wind projects. The cabinet also approved the allocation of another 303.3 hectares in Matruh to establish production capacity of green hydrogen as well as green ammonia. This decision supports Egypt's ambitions to be a regional hub of green energy exports. This year's COP27 climate summit in Sharm el-Sheikh November gave a boost to Egypt's renewable energy sector. Egypt made 55 gigawatts of green energy projects during that month. Egypt's renewable energy capacity is on track to grow some 65% by 2027, thanks to new offshore wind projects, according to the International Energy Agency's annual report on global renewables industry, which said it was set to add some 4.1 gigawatts of renewable capacity over the next 5 years, bringing total capacity to 10.4 gigawatts from 6.3 currently installed. Egypt will account for almost a quarter of total renewables capacity in the MENA region by 2027. Rapid growth in wind and solar will see renewables capacity across MENA rise even faster than in Egypt alone. Capacity is set to triple to reach 45 gigawatts in 5 years' time. The IEA says in 2021, Egypt was fourth in MENA for the amount of new renewable capacity it was expected to add over the following 5 years, behind the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Morocco. According to the report, Egypt and these 5 countries will account for some 85% of renewable energy growth in the region. Investments in Egypt's electricity and renewable energy sector are estimated at 29.3 billion euros in the plan of the 2022-2023 fiscal year, which will close next June. This was revealed by Ministry of Planning and Economic Development of Egypt in the report concerning the sector's objectives. Minister Hala Said stated that the importance of electricity and renewable energy sector emerges from its responsibility to provide energy to all its users, contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in improving services provided to citizens, meeting the needs of energy sector's national economy in terms of energy to ensure continuation of production. Egypt has already achieved remarkable progress in developing and enabling policy, regulatory and institutional framework for the deployment of renewable energy, as well as gaining experience in implementation of a wide range of renewable projects, especially for solar and wind electricity generation. Egypt's location and the high wind velocity, along with high sunlight rates, make renewable energy projects highly feasible and would attract more investment.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Dr. Tamer Rady, the head of the Economics Department, the Faculty of Business at Ain Shams University. Dr. Rady, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Rady, now the name of the game is basically green energy, green hydrogen, green ammonia, looking for solar, wind energy. Obviously, the COP27 trying to combat climate change. This is using and moving towards green environmental energy resources and renewable energy. This is the direction the whole world seems to be going for. Now, Egypt has taken it upon itself to be the gateway and a main source of renewable energy for the African continent. Now, focusing on Egypt's strategy and vision to have at least 42% of its energy by 2035. We understand that there is the Ben Ben solar plant, the Ras Gharib wind plant, and also many investments and many projects related to green hydrogen and green ammonia. Where are we looking for in terms of other land to actually build more plants and more renewable energy plants, be it solar, be it kinetic, be it solar or wind, or even for green hydrogen and green ammonia?
Well, you look at what happened in the energy sector in Egypt in general. You probably want to go back somewhere to 2014 to start. What Egypt has been facing, has been an increasing demand for electricity, for example, and for energy in general. And if you looked at the historical trend, if we estimate around the year 2000, the kilowatt per hour usage per capita in Egypt, and look at it in around 2014, you will find around a 70% increase. And if you recall, around those days, electricity used to be cut off in certain areas, certain times, because of excess loads. Well, that is now a thing of the past. So what the Egyptian government has made a strategy that is, first, to satisfy local demand, using the typical types of fuel. Yeah, fossil fuels and everything, that's fine. But alongside with it, and a very ambitious plan to replace and to start producing reusable energy from reusable sources, environmentally friendly, green, clean energy. And that really happened, and it happened in a very remarkable way, the mega project type way. In 2014, Egypt started planning, implementing. If you look at the Egyptian electricity situation today, for example, Egypt has excess supply. Now comes the wonderful part. Egypt has participated in, injected money, participated with a whole lot of multinational companies, multinational entities into financing those projects. So you ended up with big solar panel places like Bimban. And when you look at the map for that stretch, the implemented on the ground map, you will find environmentally friendly, reusable energy factories all the way up, from all the way Marsa Matruh in the northeast, and all the way down south in Bimban and Aswan, and then you would look at it at Ras Gharib and at along the Red Sea. So it's not one place, it is every place with different capacities. Egypt enjoys, for example, from 9 to 11 hours a day in the sun. That goes throughout the whole year. It's very strategically situated. It enables and gives Egypt a competitive advantage in producing solar energy. Similarly, the wind along the north coast and along the Red Sea is very, very... now, Egypt is a country that has a surplus electricity that you can export, whether from conventional types of fuel, and here is the plus thing, you can actually start producing and exporting clean energy as well.
Well, let's start talking about electricity, since we have a surplus of electrical energy. Now, we have a surplus of electrical energy now, but if we do establish new plants for solar and wind energy across different parts of Egypt that will be using as well electrical energy, also talking about trying to steer from the conventional and traditional way of having motor vehicles generated and fueled by gas and petroleum products to electrical energy. Will it still be self-sufficient, having all this electricity, distributing it in these plants of renewable energy, electrical cars, the green hydrogen and green ammonia projects, and also trying to export it as well? Would that be enough?
Right. Well, see, the strategy to fix up the energy sector has been rather comprehensive. First, it starts by economic incentives. Now, that's very important, because when you look at how Egyptians used to consume electricity, electricity was subsidized heavily, fuel was subsidized heavily, and anything that's subsidized was a price that's way much lower than the market price. People tend to misuse it. So a very courageous step was to fix that price distortions by decreasing the subsidies on fuel and on electricity. So everybody in Egypt now notices the difference in the electricity bill. That's one thing that would ration the usage of electricity. So when you look at a strategy for a whole country, well, we want to produce more, but we also want to ration what we produce. One step of rationing it is to make the price closer to the market price, so people really know what they're consuming and what is lost here for a nation. That's number one. it was coupled with implementing the metering system, the smart metering electricity systems at homes. So when you're talking about like about 12 million, I think, that was implemented in the houses. And what that does is, if you are the household owner and you're paying in advance for that meter, you're going to be very careful about your electric consumption. So that's on the consumption part, you're rationing it. Then on the production part, Egypt has managed in 6 years, when it comes to its production of electricity, in particular electricity, not energy in general, to jump from the number 145 ranking in the world to number 68, number 77. That's a 68 jumps. You jumped up 68 points.
Yes.
An amazing and a remarkable transformation in that sector. It did create a little bit of extra supply. You have a surplus, but remember that extra supply came because you have been through 2 years of Corona, and then you went into the Ukrainian-Russian war.
Yes.
But electricity demand is expected to increase anywhere from 3 to 3.5% annually for the years to come, with growth rates improving. And Egypt has a plan for that, a strategic plan to satisfy and to always keep a part to export. Now, when you look to energy in general, natural gas has been a blessing.
Yes.
The discoveries of natural gas, and Egypt turning from a country importing natural gas to a company exporting natural gas, not just the ones produced locally or extracted locally, but also the ones coming up from Israel, for example, going through the liquefaction plants over here and then going through the pipelines to Europe. That's a very good step, and it's very good for the currency position of the country. But Egypt did not forget that within this strategy is an incredibly focused strategy on green energy. So then came all the solar panels, the solar plants that you have seen, the wind farms that you have seen, and the nuclear plants, of course, planned in Dab'a, which is going to be a great addition. Again, a very ambitious look that has been achieved, that almost 20% today of your electricity production is coming through friendly, environmentally friendly, reusable energy source.
Yes.
And Egypt is looking forward to 42%. That's a highly ambitious look. We are full of difficulties along the road, but it's a very ambitious one.
Yes. Well, if we're talking about solar energy and wind energy now, if we establish or build different solar plants and different wind farms across the country. Now, what is understood is that solar energy and wind energy, the kind of energy and the amount of energy they produce, each farm or each plant, is really benefiting mainly the areas around or surrounding or nearby these plants and farms. Now, how can we make sure that we have enough plants and farms for solar and wind energy across the country to be able to reach this 42%, and at the same time, or is it a question of trying to strengthen the reach of these energies into not just the areas neighboring the plants and the farms, but also having a further reach into different areas and maybe even different governorates?
Well, now the technology allows us for a further reach. And within that strategy of increasing production came also a whole lot of spending on improving the delivery networking of electricity. So you will see tens of thousands of kilometers of power cables extended and repaired and modified, upgraded, so that the network and the grid can smartly distribute electricity from one source to another. And we have seen major connections established between power factories, electric factories. And those connections would enable a smart grid, which is one of the most advanced in the world, that has been recently implemented in Egypt, to distribute the power wherever you want. So, you know, in the north needs a little bit more power, we'll get it from the south. Now the south needs a little bit more, we'll get it from the north. Add to this an international aspiration. You know, you're getting into agreements with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and you're getting into agreements with Greece to tie up the networks of electricity grids and to connect so that the same concept would apply. You know, the Greece needs a little bit more, you'll supply it, vice versa can happen too. But Egypt is looking forward to be on the exporting side for the time being, enjoying the surplus it has nowadays. When you look at the map also, the map guarantees an equal distribution. In a way, when you allocate such factories, you're looking at the economic benefit, of course. You need a location that has the wind for the wind farms and has the sun for the solar panels. And you have achieved that, whether east or west, Marsa Matruh, Ras Gharib, Aswan, and then you have the ability to connect all those grids together. So the reach is getting larger and larger in Egypt.
Well, you've mentioned Saudi Arabia and Jordan, for instance, and we do have green contracts and prospects of investments in cooperation between Egypt and those countries. Now, would these countries focus more on green energy in terms of green hydrogen and green ammonia in specific, because that seems to be the main tendency with Saudi Arabia, for instance? Or do you think we would need the cooperation and the investments in terms of solar and wind energy?
Well, see, the remarkable transformation when it comes to the energy sector in general in Egypt, all the way back 2017, 2018, late 2014, is that Egypt has gotten rid of the monopoly on electricity production or energy production, allowing anybody, private investors, private firms, multinational firms, to become a dominant player. That's a remarkable transformation as well. You know, that is away from the mentality of monopolizing electricity or energy sector. And there came the laws to support this, that provides economic incentive. When you look at environmentally friendly things like hydrogen, the green hydrogen, green ammonia, what Egypt has declared is if you invest in such a factory in Egypt, instead of paying 14% value-added tax, you're going to pay 5%. Now, this is the proper set of economic incentives required to attract foreign direct investment. When it comes to the production of green hydrogen, for example, now, any analyst would look at the market demand right now. It's expected to increase tenfold by 2050. So green hydrogen is the name of the future. Green ammonia is the name of the future. You're looking for cleaner, cheaper sources of producing energy. And Egypt is now enjoying the greener electricity production, which is a requirement for producing green hydrogen. You know, it's only called green because you're producing it from environmentally friendly, reusable energy sources. So Egypt is saying, well, we have that. We have the wind farms, we have the solar panels. Let's make the hydrogen plants in here, the green hydrogen plants. Now you can produce it in here and we will export it. Europe is looking for consuming massive amounts of hydrogen, green hydrogen in the next few years. The United States is, and everybody is so interested in the production of green hydrogen. So it is a strategic look, surpassing its time, and has been implemented on the ground. Now, couple that with memorandum of understandings that have been signed at the COP27.
Yes.
The potential for a whole lot of foreign direct investment and a whole lot of exports in the future. It's a very good point forward.
Yes. Well, before we talk about those memorandum of understanding and the potential foreign investment, which is mainly responsible as well, not just for the expertise and the know-how, but for the financing. Now, concerning green hydrogen and green ammonia, which, and they're the future, as you've mentioned. Now, if we look at green hydrogen, it needs a lot of water, electrolysis. And in Egypt, we do have two seas and the River Nile, but it is, the usable water really is the River Nile because it's not salt water. And to be able, pardon, to use the, or do, carry out desalination process for the seawater, you would need desalination stations, which would be very costly. Now, how would we go about doing or generating or producing green hydrogen? Will we be using a lot of the Nile water? Will we be using or establishing desalination stations for seawater? How's this going to happen?
For every project, there is, of course, a visibility study. And the cheapest way of producing it is the sources of water that you have already, especially that it doesn't really require an incredible amount of water, and there is a whole recycling process that takes place at the end. So a whole majority of this might use fresh water. Desalination would require more energy, and you're speaking about green. You're using green sources of energy to achieve green hydrogen. It is green because the sources of producing it is yes. Green. So then I think it makes economic sense to use what you already have. And I don't think this is, in any case, it will affect the Egypt usage of water. It will not be a burden because the marginal usage is very little, but the potential is very high.
Dr. Rady, you've mentioned the economic incentives by turning to green energy and really investing and making use of the green and renewable energy. That would be, for instance, cutting a big portion of the value-added taxes. Now, are we talking about the factories using this energy, that they would maybe have to pay a less value-added tax, or is it the consumer at the end of that chain cutting down on the prices? I mean, how is using the green energy benefiting the Egyptian citizen at the end of the whole process? I mean, yes, it would maybe a bit costly for factories and producers to shift their use of energy in their factories, but then what about the Egyptian consumer at the end? How would this benefit the Egyptian consumer?
Well, you always hear the term green economy. All right. And what comes to mind usually is that green economy implies producing energy from reusable sources, recycling and taking care of the environment. But the philosophy of the green economy is it's another way to look at economic development. To start with, economic development implies major industry. Right. What green economy says is, well, you can achieve the goals of development. You can achieve high income, better social equalities. You can achieve better health. You can achieve a whole lot of the sustainable development goals through green projects. So as a source of providing labor, income, exports, foreign currency, and not at an expensive cost, at a reasonable cost, green economy is a good alternative for a regular economy, providing just the same benefits. That's the philosophy of it. So when you ask me, what would the Egyptian citizen benefit? Well, it would benefit from any foreign direct investment like any other foreign direct investment. It would have better job opportunities, it would have higher income and better currencies, foreign currency reserves. This is the goal. And the potential of green factories in Egypt, in particular with the green hydrogen, green ammonia, is massive because the demand for it and because you have what it takes to produce it. Now, are you going to invest from your own money, for example, local investment or governmental investment? Not really. You are ready to partnership with everybody. So what does everybody need to come in? They need economic incentives in the form of lower taxes, which I've mentioned, like the VAT. And the gain for the Egyptian citizen would be more jobs and more exports.
Yes. Well, to have more jobs and more exports, you need a know-how and expertise and training for a new workforce and a new labor market. Now, if we are partnering up with foreign investors, and now we're basically talking about the private sector. So how are we going to benefit from this expertise and this training and vocational training and all this sort of things with the memorandums of understanding that you've mentioned that were signed during COP27, and making use of all of that and trying to achieve our goal by 2035? Now, we are going through an economic crisis worldwide, a global one, inflation. Everyone's reluctant to pay money and invest. I mean, even other countries and other private sector multinationals are trying to focus on their own domestic internal production and floating their sort of businesses, keeping them afloat. So having all these economic crises going on, is this slowing down the process of transforming the whole economy into a green economy, into a green energy-driven economy?
Yes, you will have to understand the limitations of a world economic crisis. You know, in the pretty short term, definitely, for example, the Egyptian government yesterday, the Prime Minister issued a decree that said, you know, if you have an ongoing project requiring components, that is a government project, not a private one, an ongoing government project that requires a foreign component, please put a hold in it for now. Yeah, we want to conserve on the dollars we have nowadays. So that will stop. So some of those might be solar panels parts that are needed for a factory. But it is okay to put a hold for a few months or for even a year. That's in the very short term. When you look at the longer term, the prospects of investment coming from abroad, foreign direct investment, the majority of your memorandum of understanding has been with sovereign funds for different countries. And they have a pretty much a longer reach, longer look for a longer term. They would probably understand very well that, well, you know, right now might be a good point to start localizing some industry in a region that has potential, not this year, but for the next 10 and 15 and 20 and 30 years, especially when the resources are available. So I guess for real large investment opportunities, you stand a big chance of implementing some of those memorandum of understanding within the next few months or the next few, I would say year and a half. And you're committed to a strategy to reach 42% of the production of electricity from renewable sources. So that commitment is still there. That won't be slowed down. Full of challenges, but won't slow down. But in the local term, yes. On the other hand side, if I ask you, how many people have you met in the last few years that went into the solar panel industry stuff? Because I've met a lot of young people at the university that turned out into participating in small factory shops, producing solar panels, doing solar energy for houses. And I have seen a lot of young people with the idea of conserving energy, and I have seen the awareness increase by folds. I have seen people choosing to move to the Red Sea to live greener. You know, of course, this is a small number, but it is a remarkable transformation as well. You don't see those things in developing nations that easy. But the awareness is being built up. Small industries and medium industries are directed now, not just large ones, towards the conservation industries, renewable energy, and that's a positive sign.
Well, you've mentioned the small and medium enterprises that are focusing and shifting towards using greener energy. Do you feel that because the whole economy is turning into SMEs and startups and entrepreneurship, do you feel that it is easier for the SMEs to actually shift their focus and have a transition into using green energy? Much easier than the bigger ones.
Of course, it is also created by the demand for electricity and for citizens trying to find ways to reduce their electricity bill. So I would be personally, I am interested in, well, can you put solar panels for me in my house? I don't like to pay this much electricity bill. This type of demand, made me stump into a whole lot of young engineers that says, well, yeah, I'll offer you this much for that, this much. When did all of those startups start? That's a very good transformation. So whenever there is a need or a necessity, there is going to be an invention. And I guess that small and medium industries started feeling that people want to save in their electricity bill. Let's see how we can help. And that's a positive change.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Egypt is actually working on adding 1.1 gigawatts in solar and wind energy with the cheapest of prices in power for the African continent. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
1 million Egyptians are set to gain access to clean energy at the lowest rates in Africa from twin solar and wind power plants with a combined capacity of 1.07 gigawatts. The International Finance Corporation said it contributed 145 million US dollars within a 1.1 billion US dollars debt and equity package for Egypt's biggest solar farm and wind power plant projects. It arranged the deal with partner banks from the United Arab Emirates, Japan and the Netherlands. They approved the financing deal for UAE-based AMEA Power to build, own and operate the 560 megawatts Abydos solar facility and the Amunet wind system with a capacity of 505 megawatts. The two power plants will deliver renewable energy at the lowest price in Africa at 20 US dollars per megawatt an hour and 30 US dollars per megawatts per hour. World Bank Group IFC said Egypt's two biggest renewable electricity plants to meet electricity needs of 1 million people, Abydos and Amunet, would reduce Egypt's annual carbon footprint by 1.7 million tons and meet the needs of 1 million Egyptians for electricity. As the hedging organization IFC revealed that it removed most of the risk of interest rate growth by swapping the variable interest rate for a fixed rate for the term of loans for the combined packages. It noted that it mobilized up to 160 million US dollars in long-term loans from the Japan Bank for International Cooperation and the Dutch Entrepreneurial Development Bank to support the solar project. For the wind project, IFC mobilized over 500 million US dollars from the Japan Bank for International Cooperation and from 3 commercial banks under insurance from the Nippon Export and Investment Insurance and the Working Capital Facility from the Commercial International Bank of Egypt. Egypt will be able to generate almost 10,000 megawatts or 10 gigawatts of solar power in 2023 if some projects are completed. According to the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy of Egypt, plans have been drawn up to intensify investments in the renewable energy industry in order to increase the country's share of clean sources of energy in the energy mix. Such plans constitute building more renewable energy stations, green hydrogen and ammonia plants for exports.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Rady. Now, so we're talking about producing and establishing all these sort of lands and plants and farms and green hydrogen, green ammonia, solar, wind energy, everything. Now, we're talking about now offering all these different kinds of energy for not just Egypt, but the rest of the African continent. Not just the African continent, but maybe places in Asia, places in Europe. So how is this going to happen? How do we decide how much do we keep for ourselves? How feasible and practical is it to transform this sort of energy to the rest of the African continent, the rest of the world, basically?
Well, it's the same logic that applied to natural gas, for example. You had a surplus of natural gas after being an importer or a net importer of natural gas. You keep what you want and you export the surplus. Mm-hmm. Similarly, for wind electricity generated from electricity and for the solar generated electricity and all other sources of environmentally friendly sources. You would keep some and you can export some. If you look at what the Europeans, for example, did with Morocco, yeah, one of the largest solar farms established by European Union, Spain in particular, so that the son of Morocco can transmit the electricity to Spain. You can follow the same path. When you have a surplus, you can use it. Similarly, you are using 20% generated now from renewable source of your electrical consumption. That's a very good number. And you forecast for the future. How much do I need? How much should I produce? How much should I export? And what is the market price? Because price is always an incentive.
Yes.
Right? So if you find, for example, that it's more profitable that you direct that clean energy production to hydrogen, to green hydrogen production, to increase the exports of green hydrogen, well, it's more rewarding to follow that path. So you follow the market price. And almost every other study says there is a demand for energy. The demand is not going to go anywhere.
And is that also decided by, I mean, the destination of our energy exports is decided by the memorandums of understanding that we've already signed with different countries? I mean, if they're investing and putting money in our plants and our farms, does that mean that they are the priority in our export destinations?
Like any other responsible business seeking maximum profit, you know, they come with their visibility study. They know who's the consumer going to be, and that's where it's going to be directed.
Yes. Dr. Rady, now we're talking about 2035 wanting to reach 42% of our energy consumption through renewable energy and green energy as well. Now by 2035 it is estimated that our consumption of energy in general would be 120% even higher than now, which makes the 42% even a bigger challenge and a bigger goal to achieve. Now, is that still feasible with our 120% of energy consumption by 2035 and still trying to cover 42% by that year? Is it still feasible? Is it such a difficult task to achieve, especially keeping in mind the international crises that we're going through, the economic crises, pandemic, and even assuming that all this is done, crises keep showing up one way or another?
Well, let's hope there are no more crises.
Let's hope so, fingers crossed.
Well, the answer to that is, look at the last 6 years. You know, again, when you jump in the ranks from being country number 145 in the production of electricity, and you are now number 77 worldwide ranking, jumping by 68 countries ranks, 68 in 6 years. I guess that tells you that it can be done. Now, can it be done easily? Well, as you said, you never know what lies ahead. But when you put the target and you work with a strategy to reach that target and to continuously revise that target, and when you hold COP27 in Egypt, you're showing the whole world, I am committed to go green. I am a part of the world, and the world has been experiencing the greenhouse effects. Egypt is going to be one of the biggest losers because of the damage of what that has to the environment, the coastlines of Egypt, the desertation, and then you say, I am committed and I want the rest of the world to be committed, and here's what I am locally doing to be a responsible member of the world. And I expect from all the other countries to respect that. We have the majority of those countries have signed on the Paris Treaty. We are committed members. We are exerting all what we can. And what we have achieved so far in Egypt is a very clear signal of that commitment. So when we say by 2035, I want a 42% to be clean, it's a high aspiration given the circumstances we are living in right now worldwide.
Yes.
It will be full of difficulties, but I believe you can achieve as much of it as you can.
Well, trying to achieve as much of it as we can. I mean, you've mentioned what we've achieved over the past 6 years now. How soon can we see these projects come into fruition and we actually see and reap the benefits and the fruits of all these sort of projects? And are there certain projects that would be fruitful, faster? I mean, is it about green energy? The green hydrogen, green ammonia might be a bit slower than solar and wind farms.
Not really. When you look at those, they are all economic projects made for profit, made based on visibility studies, based on market demand, based on prices for the products to be sold. The eminent benefit, of course, is the labor created, job opportunities created. To some of those factories already established have benefited from multinational corporations, multinational funds. World Development Bank, so many different funds have participated in many different projects. So those are eminent, real, fast impact by deploying all those jobs. Now the production that comes out participated in the national grid. 20% of it at least now is coming from, when it comes to electricity production, it's coming from renewable sources. So that's eminent profit. Expanding on it would continue that success story. It is just a business like any other business in high demand. But it is a good for the environment business. Yes. And the beauty of it is, well, it's good.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, obviously Egypt has not held the COP27 conference and summit for just as a propaganda or a political show, but also Egypt is showing it is clear and tangible and practical steps being taken into transforming into a green economy using green renewable energy sources. Definitely one step ahead steps that have been taken for the past 6 years, but still more needs to be done. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Dr. Tamer Rady, Head of the Economics Department, the Faculty of Business at Ain Shams University. Dr. Rady, always a pleasure having you with us on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on our International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.